Hello, everyone. Welcome to our briefing. This briefing is brought to you by WorldAware and Crisis 24, subsidiaries of GardaWorld. Crisis 24 and WorldAware are working together towards a single goal, delivering best-in-class intelligence and risk management services to our clients and partners. Our first speaker today is Allo Tedla. Allo is an Eritrean native with decades of international education and work experience. He is a former Eritrean diplomat and representative to both the African Union and United Nations. Allo is going to provide a situational analysis of the current unrest in Ethiopia and key escalations you should monitor. Allo?
Thank you, Mary. Again, I'm Allo Tedla. Today in our webinar, we are going to focus on the conflict in the northern Ethiopian region. In this presentation, I will try to give you a briefing on the significant development, what's going on the ground, and the impact occurring outside the conflict area, potential triggers for escalation, and finally, I'll touch upon the impact of the conflict on business operating in Ethiopia. The conflict in Tigray last week, it has started last week when the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered a large-scale military operation in Tigray region following the unarmed attack by Tigrayan Regional Army on Ethiopian Defense Forces. The Ethiopian government also ordered a state of emergency, and the NDF is engaged in dismantling the regional armed forces in different angles. After the conflict in Dashana, which erupted in early November, then TPLF forces were able to conquer heavy weapons and heavy weapons from the Ethiopian army. Since then, the operation is going on, and particularly in the western and the northern part of Tigray region. It has a potential going from the south and the east, as we have heard Prime Minister Abiy saying that new fronts will be beginning to open. In addition to that, the Ethiopian Defense Force are also attacking airstrike on TPLF military installations in and around Mekelle and Adigrat. TPLF spokesperson Getachew Reda confirmed the strike, but said the jets missed target. Moreover, TPLF's its army also shot down one aircraft, but we cannot confirm this one from independent source as yet. The Ethiopian Defense Forces were able to conquer some territories like the Humera Airport, the prime route also to Sudan. From the TPLF side, this has been rejected, and they are saying that things are going well. The town of Shire remains in Tigray control, with reports of large Tigrayan troops movement in the area. In Tigray, residents have reported that they are not getting enough information from the federal government and regional government. Tensions throughout the general public remain heightened. The regional bureau, public relation bureau, is not providing detailed information regarding any development. Within Tigray, officials have imposed movement restrictions, and residents need special permit to move to one place to another. In Mekelle, there is a frequent power outage, and the acute water problem still remain dire, and it's even get worsened because of the water distribution get worsened because of the dire power outage. This conflict, apart from being in Tigray, it has also implication. It has also start to impact, other regions. Although Prime Minister Abiy said this is a clear target to eliminate the TPLF, and also the federal army is given a special specific mandate, and doesn't aim to all TPLF or Tigrayans. However, reports are coming which indicate the reverse. In Addis Ababa, Tigrayans have been victimized. tension between the Amhara and the Tigrayan region have escalated. And also today we have heard that 17 senior Tigrayan military officers are detained. In addition to that, the Ethiopian parliament has lifted prosecution immunity for 39 members of the TPLF leadership. This includes also the president of Tigray, Dr. Debretsion Gebremichael. Local sources are saying business people, Tigrayan nationals working in security, government offices are temporarily relocated and held in the camps in Addis Ababa and Adama. Ethiopian authorities have recalled retired generals to participate in this operation. There are also reports coming that the Ethiopian government has mobilized at least 80,000 soldiers who are dismissed during the previous region. Coupled with the outbreak of coronavirus, the war has affected the supply chain going to the Tigray region. As a result, we have reports like price hike, shortage of essential goods, and difficulty in cross-border trading. Of course, this war could also trigger and escalate to a higher level. And there are some points we really want to address when we speak this issue. The first thing is the Tigray officials are warning, some of them at least are warning that there is a possibility for unilateral declaration of independent state if this intimidation continues. This would mean it will have both regional as well as regional as well as international impact. When we see it from a regional point of view, this would mean the Amhara will engage in full-scale war, especially to gain back or return back the disputed territories in Walkite, in the Western Tigray, and Raya zone. Tigray region could also strike with these heavy artilleries and weapons they have, rockets and artillery targeting major cities and strategic locations in the conflict area. This war also have an international impact involving regional countries such as Eritrea and Egypt. From Eritrea side, being in the side of the federal government, could support the operation, anticipating the end of Tigray army would mean freeing the occupying territory awarded by the international arbitrations set after the 1998-2000 Eritrea-Ethiopia border conflict. From the Egyptian side, though there is nothing coming from the country yet, the federal government has been accusing Egypt of supporting armed groups to disrupt the construction of the controversial Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is built over the Nile River. Egypt might think this is an opportunity as negotiation over the table is not working. Mediation through the African Union and other entities are not giving result. The conflict have also potential spread into the neighboring states. As we said, it's the Amhara region, considering that this have a real impact on the territorial claim they have. Apart from that, what does it mean on the impact operating business on business operating in Ethiopia? What impact does it have? We should look at it also. The ongoing disruption in Tigray region, the air, overland travel, telecommunication likely to persist. Violent protest in favor of against of the military offense is expected in major area. Anti-war process in Addis Ababa is less likely. However, Tigrayans living in the city could demonstrate if the operation persists. Since Abiy is moving soldiers from all angles of the Ethiopia, there is a high probability of security gap at country and regional level. At country level, the Ethiopian Defense Force, which were located in Oromia, Amhara, Somalia, Somali, and Benishangul Gumuz, have relocated to northern Tigray for this operation. These were deployed to curb potential protests. For example, such relocation of force in Oromia likely to give chance for the Oromo youth group, locally known as the Keros, to block roads and disrupt transportation along the route to Addis Ababa. We could also see a security gap at regional level, mainly in the country Somalia. Ethiopia has recalled some of its forces from Somalia, which were deployed to fight against the Al-Shabaab insurgents along the side of the government of Somalia and the AMISOM troops. The movement of force like to pose security challenge to the federal government of Somalia, as the country is in preparation for election in the upcoming months. Potential terrorist attack on government and business facilities in major cities in Ethiopia remain high, as TPLF and other armed forces could send some of the armed insurgents to these urban centers. Early this week, the federal police said they have captured insurgents who were sent by TPLF and Oromo Liberation Front Shane group. The conflict, apart from the military operation, the conflict is aggravating the existing humanitarian situation in the region. This war is broken out when the region is already affected by the outbreak of corona, locust invasion, and flooding. The ongoing desert locust response operation has been paused to enable the war. Since this is a current harvesting season, farmers who have been mobilized to join the conflict will not be able to get their harvesting products. Coupled with the impact of COVID-19, the supply community of the region is really hampered, and it's going to get worsened if these things continue. This would raise similarly raise price hikes, shortage of essential goods, and difficulties in cross-border trading. Finally, in a nutshell, we could see things are deteriorating in Tigray as the Ethiopian Defense Forces are trying to occupy, and there is a setback from both sides. However, if this thing involve major actors in that region, that is Eritrea and Egypt, this will be escalated to international conflict. In addition, it has a potential of going to a civil war, which could loom for a protracted period of time. Thank you, Mary. Back to you.
Thank you, Allo. Our next speaker is Tony Roccaforte. Tony is a senior security consultant with our Global Assistance and Response team. Tony advises clients in the areas of physical security, emergency response, crisis management, continuity operations, and training exercises. Tony is going to provide guidance on how organizations operating near the conflict zone can protect their people and organizations. Tony?
Thanks, Mary. Thank you, Allo, as well. Good day, all. I'll be brief. I'm going to address this bit first. WorldAware has had some initial inquiries around evacuation capabilities in northern Ethiopia, but we have not been asked to activate assets on behalf of any of our clients yet. WorldAware does have limited assets on the ground in the region that may be able to support an evacuation if you decide to pursue that route. However, the big caveat here is that unilateral movement under hostile conditions is usually not advisable. Once the shooting starts, it's often preferable to shelter in place rather than try to move unilaterally. When I say unilateral movement, I mean movement that's done in absence of any kind of coordination with local or regional authorities. We have heard rumors that authorities in the region are working to open up humanitarian aid and evacuation corridors, but the timeline, the specific routes and assets available to support those efforts are unclear. All that being said, some high-level recommendations here on the slide. I'm not going to belabor these points. They're self-explanatory, but one I want to call out, ensure your people in the region register with their diplomatic missions as soon as possible if they haven't already done so. We don't want to write plans that depend entirely on government support. Given unless your organization is working directly in support of the government, there's no guarantee diplomatic missions overseas can facilitate a timely evacuation or support you effectively if in the event of a prolonged shelter in place. But that being said, Keeping lines of communication open with our embassies will help with situational awareness, and it will help with accountability of our people. Ensuring we know exactly where our people are could be a key differentiator if this situation deteriorates drastically. So, if you can, it's best to contact your people directly and confirm their exact location. Get their address, the address of their residence, make sure you know their office location, the location of their dependents as well. If they're working in remote areas, get grid coordinates or a lat long in case you need to steer assets to their work site. Set up a detailed comms plan with your people as well, incorporating multiple platforms. Remember the acronym PACE: primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. Obviously, local cell networks and radio platforms spanning multiple frequency bands will often serve as primary and alternate comms methods. However, in areas without network coverage, in areas that are beyond the range of relay stations, or if certain communications platforms are jammed, as we're already seeing up north, satellite phones or two-way GPS messaging devices may be your only option. As I said, comms are already spotty, very spotty in northern Ethiopia right now. If you have satellite communications capabilities, you're ahead of the game a bit. But those resources will be precious if this situation continues to develop along the same trajectory. If you have SATCOM devices, they should be treated as controlled items. Keep the batteries charged at all times. Avoid morale calls if you can. But make sure everyone in your organization knows how to use those phones, and designate specific windows for check-ins with your security teams or your embassies to conserve battery power there. Have clear escalation procedures written out for your staff or support teams on the ground as well in the event multiple check-ins are missed. If you have resources available, escalation procedures should ideally include some kind of plan for face-to-face wellness checks with personnel, either via another staff member, local contacts, local first responders, or contracted security personnel, again, assuming those assets are available. A final note on comms in these conflict zones: have your people sanitize their media devices. Make sure your people are not photographing or recording police or military movements or checkpoints. Have your people scrub their phones, tablets, laptops, whatever, or any other device they have for any of that type of content if they're planning, especially if they're planning to go through customs anytime soon. Delete all texts, threads, timelines, tweets, anything related to the conflict. Have your people in the region pack a go bag now as well. Ideally, some sort of go bag is part of your everyday carry already, but it's especially important to have one on hand if you're traveling in these sorts of kinetic environments. At a minimum, you want to have all your key identification, all your important contact information, a hard copy of your contact information, travel documents, credit cards and cash, enough to sustain you for 4 days at least. Any required medication with your prescription if applicable, extra communications devices and power supplies, obviously fully charged at all times, high energy snacks, bottled water, some kind of water treatment, either chlorine tabs or a filter of some sort. Keep a flashlight in there with extra batteries and some rain gear, as well as some comfort items if you got room. Once you have your go bag packed, try to leave it packed, keep everything charged and keep it close by at all times. The point is to be ready to move at a moment's notice and be able to sustain ourselves for at least a couple of days if necessary. We don't always know which stressors we're going to encounter, when we're going to encounter them, and how long they're going to last. So we need to be prepared always. We need to start thinking and acting like our own first responders in these types of environments. Next, we will cover a bit about shelter in place and evacuation planning. At the risk of oversimplifying, these are some high-level talking points, but really a lot goes into developing effective evacuation and shelter-in-place plans. When devising a shelter-in-place plan, ideally we want to have at least a 3-week supply of potable water, ideally 1 gallon per person per day, as well as high-energy, shelf-stable foods that require little to no preparation. I'm talking, the minimum there, we're talking 1,500 calories worth per person per day at a minimum. We also need to ensure that we have adequate toiletries and personal hygiene items for all impacted personnel. We need medical supplies and trauma kits on hand. If people are taking prescription meds, we need to have a plan in place to ensure they can get those refilled in the event of a prolonged shelter in place. Just like with our comms plan, redundancy is key here as well. So make sure you have backup plans for water, food, medical, and fuel resupply. If resupply is going to pose a challenge in your area, make sure you have some kind of rationing plan in place as well in the event your stockpiles start to become depleted. When it comes to evacuations, a quick caveat, we need to be careful in these environments. Conflict areas are extremely fluid and unpredictable. Actors on both sides are on edge. So the risk of harm in moving, as I mentioned earlier, in moving unilaterally is going to be greater than if you shelter in place and maintain a low profile if you're in the actual conflict zone. You know, don't mistake my meaning. There are no absolutes in these types of situations, but evacuation under hostile conditions should, generally speaking, only be undertaken when the risk of remaining in place outweighs the risk of being mobile and exposed. All that being said, when building out your evacuation plan, ideally we've tested and validated every aspect of the plan, and ideally we're able to take a phased approach to the evac. Unfortunately, in northern Ethiopia, that window can close pretty quickly. So it's important that we ensure our people are prepared at all times. Make sure your organization has a robust evacuation plan in place in the event a window of opportunity presents itself to move. Make sure your people have been briefed on that plan, and if you have to execute, do your absolute best to stick as closely to the plan as possible. You know, we want to stick to those predetermined assembly areas. We want to stick to those predetermined routes. That's all going to become extremely important if, for whatever reason, some of our personnel go missing. We need to make sure we can all fall back to the common denominator that is that plan. We want to keep our vehicles prepped and staged at all times, meaning fully fueled, equipped with a spare tire and jack, and all necessary emergency equipment. Ensure multiple assembly areas and evacuation points have been identified, mapped, and validated. Make sure everyone in your organization is briefed on the location of those sites. Make sure you have enough vehicles and drivers to transport everyone within your organization and their essential gear. Again, redundancy is important here. Have a plan in place to cross-load if a vehicle in your convoy breaks down or is disabled for whatever reason. And then a bit about routes. Remember, security forces in these types of environments can close down main roads, restrict access to airfields or other hubs on short notice. Choke points can easily become flash points. Bridges may become targets and become impassable. So again, redundancy. Have alternate routes planned out ahead of time and enough fuel in your vehicles, in or on your vehicles, to travel those routes if necessary. Track your location at all times on a hard copy map. Don't rely solely on GPS. Anything that requires batteries will probably fail you when you need it the most. So have routes drawn out on actual paper, and even if it's a hand-drawn strip map, make sure you've got something, a physical map on hand. When you're moving, stay in constant contact with your security team. If you have the WorldQ mobile app or Critical Track on your phone, consider using the check-in functions as you're moving, so response coordinators can track your progress en route to your destination. That'll make things go a little bit smoother in case additional assets need to get steered to your location. Make sure you plan a few safe havens, hotels, hospitals, shopping centers, publicly accessible areas, tourist locations in some cases as well along each route. Just a place you can go to remove yourself from any kind of stressor, regardless of what it is. However, in these types of environments, in active conflict areas, we need to avoid lingering near security checkpoints, police stations, police cordons, government buildings, embassies, etc. Another note regarding overland movement in the region, and this is geared specifically towards clients operating in remote areas in the north, both in Tigray, Afar, and neighboring areas along the border. Fratricide is going to be a concern. Explosive remnants of war, landmines, unexploded ordnance, or UXOs will present a hazard in those areas, not just from this conflict, but from previous scraps in the region as well. Obviously, if you can avoid the conflict areas, do so. But if your operations in the region require overland movement for whatever reason, in those in the conflict areas, make sure your routes are very carefully planned and coordinated with the local authorities, as I've mentioned already. Ensure personnel travel only on established routes, clearly marked paths, and definitely avoid areas where the locals are refusing to travel. Learn the local spelling, the signs and symbols commonly used to mark minefields in the region. In this area, these kinds of markers can be as simple as a pile of rocks painted red. So just be aware of what's used in your area of operation. All right, moving on. Clients throughout Ethiopia should also prepare for an uptick in decentralized attacks, not just isolated to this conflict area, not just isolated to the north, to the Tigray region. When a threat is perceived or some kind of attack occurs, think time, distance, and cover. If you can, leave yourself enough time to evaluate the situation before committing to a course of action in response to ensure you're not running into something worse, a complex coordinated attack, secondary explosives, or follow-on assaults. If the time is extremely minimal, immediately put distance between you and the threat. Get off the X, as we like to say, and move towards a known safe haven. And if you can't put distance between you and the threat, get behind cover. Something that stops bullets, fragmentation, and debris. You know, there's a difference between cover and concealment. Make sure you understand which is which. You know, cover is something that fragmentation is not going to be able to penetrate. You know, exterior wall, concrete walls, exterior walls, curbs. You know, earthen berms, engine blocks, things like that. However, don't linger any longer than necessary behind cover. You know, once the opportunity to move presents itself, act quickly and decisively, and create space between you and the threat. If the attack occurs while you're in the hotel, don't watch the activity from your window. Stay, you know, in an inside room, right, to avoid any kind of fragmentation or blast debris. If you're in a vehicle and during a kinetic attack, you know, try to turn away. If it's not possible, abandon the vehicle and seek shelter in a building or along a side street. Finally, from an organizational perspective, now is as good a time as any for risk managers, security managers, EHS personnel, any organization with people in the region to review their emergency response plans. Those are the specific plans designed to ensure life safety. You know, validate your plan and take corrective action as soon as possible to plug any gaps you find. Risk managers should also take the time to review any and all applicable insurance policies as well. But remember, insurance is not a plan; it's just a funding tool. So you're still going to need to develop, you know, even if it's an ad hoc response process, you still need to have a plan to work from. If you need assistance, you know, don't hesitate to contact WorldAware at any time, and we'll be happy to propose some solutions.